There are arguments that start in coffee shops and end up costing you six figures. For Kyle Brennan, that argument started on a Tuesday morning in January 2022 at a seed dealer meeting in Newton, Iowa. The room was full of farmers, 40, maybe 50 guys, all corn and soybean operators, all gathered to hear about new seed genetics and early order discounts. Kyle was sitting near the back, half listening to the presentation, when an older farmer named Dennis Cole stood up during the Q&A. Dennis farmed about 1,600 acres. He'd been working the same ground since 1979. He ran all John Deere equipment, the kind of farmer who'd seen every trend come and go and wasn't impressed by any of them. Someone asked Dennis what he thought about precision ag technology. Dennis shrugged. Doesn't matter what you're running. It's all about the operator. You put a good farmer in a 20-year-old tractor, he'll outproduce a bad farmer in brand new iron every time. A few guys nodded. A few others stayed quiet. Kyle raised his hand. I disagree, Kyle said. The room went quiet. Dennis turned to look at him. You disagree, Dennis said. Yeah, Kyle said. I think modern equipment creates measurable yield advantages. GPS accuracy, variable rate seeding, auto steer, section control. Those things add bushels. It's not just operator skill anymore. Dennis smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile that said he'd heard this argument before from younger farmers who thought they knew better. So you're saying the equipment makes the farmer, Dennis said. I'm saying the right equipment lets a good farmer perform better, Kyle said. And the data proves it. What data? Kyle felt everyone in the room watching him now. University studies, precision ag research, yield monitor comparisons. It's documented. Dennis nodded slowly. Well, I've been farming for 43 years, and I've seen plenty of guys buy expensive equipment and still produce average yields. So maybe your data doesn't tell the whole story. The moderator jumped in and moved the conversation forward, but the tension hung in the room. Kyle sat there, feeling his face flush, and made a decision. He was going to prove Dennis wrong, not with words, with yields, and he was going to do it in a way that nobody could argue with. Kyle Brennan was 34 years old. He'd taken over his family's 1,800-acre operation in 2016 when his father retired. Kyle had a degree in ag economics from Iowa State. He believed in data, he believed in technology, and he believed that modern equipment used correctly could create competitive advantages that went beyond operator skill. But he'd never tested that belief in a controlled way. Until now. Kyle went home from that seed meeting and started making calls. First, he called his accountant, a guy named Steve who managed the farm's books and helped Kyle think through major equipment decisions. I want to replace my entire fleet, Kyle said. Steve was quiet for a moment. Your entire fleet? Yeah. Kyle, you've got relatively new equipment. Your Case IH tractors are only 4 years old. Your combines are 6. Why would you replace everything? Because I want to run a test, Kyle said. I want to prove that precision ag technology creates yield advantages. Steve sighed. How much is this going to cost? I don't know yet, Kyle said, but I'll get quotes. Kyle, this sounds like an expensive way to win an argument. It's not about winning an argument, Kyle said. It's about proving a point that matters. Steve didn't sound convinced, but he didn't try to stop him either. Kyle's second call was to a Massey Ferguson dealership in Des Moines. He'd been watching Massey Ferguson's precision ag marketing for 2 years. They'd been pushing integrated technology hard, auto steer, variable rate everything, real-time yield monitoring, cloud-based data management. Massey Ferguson claimed their systems were as advanced as anything Deere or Case offered. Maybe better. Kyle wanted to test that claim. The sales rep at the dealership was a guy named Brian, mid-40s, professional. He didn't oversell. What are you looking for? Brian asked. I want to replace my entire fleet, Kyle said. Tractors and combines, all Massey Ferguson, and I want the most advanced precision ag package you offer. Brian pulled up his system. Okay, let's talk specifics. How many acres are you running? 1,800. What's your current equipment? Kyle listed it. 2 Case IH Magnum 340 tractors, 1 Case IH 8240 combine, standard precision ag, auto steer, section control, basic yield monitoring. Brian thought for a moment, then he started building a proposal. For an 1,800 acres, I'd recommend 2 Massey Ferguson 8S series tractors, probably an 8S225 and an 8S265, both with the full precision ag suite. That's factory-integrated GPS, variable rate seeding and application, auto steer, section control, and telemetry. What about combines? One Ideal 9T, same precision package, real-time yield monitoring, moisture sensing, automatic header height control, everything integrated into one platform. What's the total cost? Brian ran the numbers. With trade-ins on your case equipment, you're looking at about $1.76 million financed over 7 years. Kyle felt his chest tighten. That was more than he'd ever spent on equipment in a single year. But if he was going to prove his point, he had to commit fully. What kind of yield advantage can I expect? Kyle asked. Brian smiled. That depends on how you use it, but farmers running our full precision package are seeing anywhere from 5 to 15 bushels per acre improvement on corn. 15 bushels? On the high end, yeah, if you're optimizing every variable. Kyle thought about that. 15 bushels per acre across 900 acres of corn was 13,500 extra bushels. At $5 per bushel, that was $67,500 in additional revenue per year. When can you deliver? Kyle asked. Brian checked his calendar. We could have you fully equipped by late March. Kyle extended his hand. Let's do it. They shook. Kyle walked out of that dealership feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Certainty. He was going to prove that equipment mattered, and he was going to prove it with data Dennis Cole couldn't argue with. Kyle didn't tell anyone what he was doing. Not his neighbors, not the guys at the coffee shop, not even his wife, Rachel, until after he'd signed the contract. Rachel was not thrilled. You spent how much? She asked. $1.76 million, Kyle said. But we're trading in the case equipment, so the net new debt is only about $900,000. Only $900,000, Rachel said. She sat down at the kitchen table. Kyle, why? Because I'm going to prove that precision ag creates yield advantages, Kyle said. And I'm going to document it in a way that's undeniable. Rachel looked at him. She'd been a farm wife long enough to know when her husband had made up his mind. Okay, she said, but if this doesn't work, we're having a very different conversation. It'll work, Kyle said. The Massey Ferguson equipment arrived in late March 2022. 2 bright red 8S tractors, 1 massive Ideal 9T combine, all of it equipped with the most advanced precision ag technology Massey Ferguson offered. Kyle spent 2 full days with a Massey Ferguson tech learning the systems, how to calibrate the GPS, how to set up variable rate seeding maps, how to interpret real-time yield data. It was more complex than anything Kyle had run before, but that was the point. If he was going to prove that technology mattered, he had to actually use the technology. Spring planting started in early May. Kyle planted 900 acres of corn and 900 acres of soybeans. But he didn't just plant, he collected data. He used the Massey Ferguson's GPS to log every pass. He calibrated the variable rate seeding system to adjust population based on soil zones. He monitored seed depth in real time and made micro adjustments on the fly. It was exhausting, but it was also exhilarating. For the first time in Kyle's farming career, he felt like he was operating at a level most farmers never reached. By late May, planting was done. Kyle uploaded all his data to the cloud-based management platform Massey Ferguson provided. Then he waited. Summer 2022 was decent. Not great, not terrible. Rainfall was average. Temperatures were normal. Kyle walked his fields every week. He monitored growth stages. He checked for disease pressure. And in late June, he made a decision that would change everything. He hired a precision ag consultant. The consultant's name was Dr. Laura Stein. She had a PhD in agronomy from Purdue and ran a private consulting firm that specialized in helping farmers optimize precision ag systems. Kyle called her on a Tuesday afternoon. Dr. Stein, I want to maximize the yield potential of my operation using precision ag. I'm running full Massey Ferguson systems. I need someone who can help me use them correctly. Laura didn't hesitate. What are you currently doing? Kyle explained his setup. The variable rate seeding, the GPS accuracy, the real-time monitoring. Laura listened. Then she said, that's a good start, but if you really want to optimize, you need soil sampling, nutrient mapping, and variable rate fertilizer application. You can't just vary your seed population. You need to vary everything. How much does that cost? For 1,800 acres, you're looking at about $35,000 for comprehensive soil sampling and nutrient analysis, then another $20,000 for custom application maps. Kyle felt his stomach tighten. That was $55,000 on top of the $900,000 in new equipment debt. But he'd come this far. "Let's do it," Kyle said. Laura's team came out in July. They took soil samples every 2.5 acres across Kyle's entire operation. They tested for nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, pH, organic matter, and micronutrients. 2 weeks later, Laura came back with the results. "Your fields are more variable than you think," she said, spreading maps across Kyle's kitchen table. "You've got zones that are nitrogen-rich and zones that are deficient. You've got pH swings from 5.8 to 7.2. If you're applying fertilizer uniformly, you're over-applying in some areas and under-applying in others. So what do I do?" "Variable rate everything," Laura said. "I'll build you custom application maps for fall fertilizer. You'll apply exactly what each zone needs, nothing more, nothing less." Kyle looked at the maps. They were color-coded, detailed, scientific. This was what he'd been looking for. Proof that precision ag wasn't just marketing. It was real, and it was measurable. Fall 2022 came fast. Kyle hired a custom applicator to spread fertilizer using Laura's variable rate maps. It cost him another $18,000. But when harvest started in late September, Kyle knew it had been worth it. The Ideal 9T combine cut through his cornfields like a machine possessed. The yield monitor lit up with numbers Kyle had never seen before. First field, 212 bushels per acre. Second field, 219 bushels per acre. Third field, 207 bushels per acre. Kyle called Laura halfway through October. "I'm averaging 214 bushels per acre on corn," he said. "That's 26 bushels higher than last year." Laura wasn't surprised. That's what happens when you optimize inputs. You're not just throwing fertilizer and seed at the field and hoping for the best. You're treating every zone as its own microenvironment. "But is it the equipment or the management?" Kyle asked. Laura paused. "It's both. The equipment gives you the capability, but without the data and the management, the equipment doesn't matter. You needed both." Kyle thought about that. He'd wanted to prove that equipment created yield advantages, and he had, but not in the way he'd expected. By early November, Kyle's harvest was complete. Final numbers: 214 bushels per acre on corn, 64 bushels per acre on soybeans. Both numbers were personal records. Kyle ran the math. The additional yield was worth approximately $94,000 in gross revenue compared to his previous 5-year average, but the cost of achieving it was significant. New equipment debt, $900,000 over 7 years, roughly $128,000 per year in payments. Precision ag consulting, $55,000. Custom fertilizer application, $18,000. Total first-year cost, $201,000. Kyle sat at his desk, staring at the numbers, and realized something uncomfortable. He'd proven that precision ag could increase yields, but he'd spent more achieving those yields than the yields were worth, at least in year 1. Kyle told himself it would balance out over time. The equipment payments would stay constant. The yields would compound. Eventually, the investment would pay off. But in the back of his mind, a question nagged at him. Had he proven that equipment mattered? Or had he just proven that spending a lot of money on inputs mattered? In December 2022, the Iowa Soybean Association hosted a winter grower meeting in Ames. Kyle attended. He brought his yield data with him. During the open discussion session, Kyle stood up and shared his results. "I ran a test this year," Kyle said. "I wanted to see if modern precision ag equipment could create measurable yield advantages. I replaced my entire fleet with Massey Ferguson iron, full precision package, variable rate seeding, GPS-guided everything. I also invested in soil sampling and custom nutrient mapping." He paused. "My corn yields went from an average of 188 bushels per acre to 214. That's a 26 bushel improvement." A few farmers nodded. A few others looked skeptical. One guy raised his hand. "How much did you spend to get that improvement?" Kyle hesitated. "About $200,000 in year 1 costs." The room went quiet. Another farmer spoke up. "So you spent $200,000 to make an extra $94,000. In year 1, yes," Kyle said, "but the equipment debt is spread over 7 years, and the yields should stay elevated." "Should," the guy said. Kyle felt his face flush. The data's clear. Precision ag works. An older farmer in the back, not Dennis Cole, but someone from the same cloth, stood up. Son, nobody's arguing that precision ag doesn't work, he said. But what you proved is that if you spend enough money, you can buy higher yields. That's not the same as proving the equipment matters. Kyle opened his mouth to respond, but the farmer wasn't done. What you didn't prove is whether a guy with your management skills and that kind of investment could have done the same thing with different equipment, or whether the real advantage was the consulting and the soil work, not the Massey Ferguson tractors. Kyle sat down. He didn't have an answer for that. Winter turned to spring. Kyle planted again in 2023. He used the same precision systems, the same variable rate maps, the same management intensity. This time, he didn't hire Laura. He couldn't afford another $55,000 in consulting. Instead, he tried to replicate what she'd taught him. He updated his soil maps based on yield data from 2022. He adjusted his fertilizer rates. He fine-tuned his seeding population. Planting went smoothly. Summer 2023 was hotter and drier than 2022. Not a drought, but not ideal either. Kyle watched his fields closely. The corn looked good, not great, but good. Harvest came in September. The ideal 9T ran just as well as it had the year before, but the numbers on the yield monitor were different. First field, 198 bushels per acre. Second field, 203 bushels per acre. Third field, 191 bushels per acre. By the time Kyle finished corn, his average was 197 bushels per acre, still above his historical average, but 16 bushels lower than 2022. Kyle called Laura. What happened, he asked. Laura pulled up his data remotely. She studied his maps, his application rates, his seeding decisions. You made a few mistakes, she said gently. Your nitrogen rates were too low in 3 zones. Your seeding population was too high in your lighter soils, and you didn't account for the rainfall deficit in July. But I followed the same process you taught me, Kyle said. You followed it, Laura said. But precision ag isn't a one-time setup. It's continuous optimization. Every year is different. Every field evolves. If you want to stay at 210 plus bushels, you need to keep investing in the data and the consulting. Kyle hung up and sat in his office. He'd proven that precision ag could create yield advantages, but he'd also proven that those advantages required constant investment, constant attention, constant expertise. And without that, the expensive equipment was just expensive equipment. In November 2023, 3 of Kyle's neighbors bought Massey Ferguson equipment. They'd seen Kyle's 2022 yields. They'd heard him talk about precision ag at grower meetings. They wanted the same results. One guy bought an 8S265 tractor. Another bought an Ideal 9T combine. The third bought both. They all called Kyle for advice. Kyle tried to help. He explained the importance of soil sampling, the need for variable rate application, the value of good consulting. But none of them wanted to spend $55,000 on consulting. They figured the equipment would be enough. Harvest 2024 came. The first neighbor averaged 189 bushels per acre on corn, about the same as he'd been getting with his old equipment. The second neighbor averaged 194, a modest improvement, but nothing dramatic. The third neighbor averaged 186, actually lower than his previous 5-year average. All 3 of them called Kyle in frustration. You said Massey Ferguson's precision ag systems would boost yields, one of them said. They can, Kyle said carefully, but only if you use them right. Did you do soil sampling? No, that's expensive. Did you set up variable rate application? I tried, but I didn't really know what I was doing. Kyle closed his eyes. That's the problem. The equipment gives you the tools, but if you don't know how to use them, they don't help. So you're saying I wasted my money? The neighbor said. Kyle didn't know how to answer that, because the truth was complicated. The equipment wasn't a waste. It was capable. It was advanced. But capability didn't equal results. And results required expertise that most farmers didn't have. In January 2025, Kyle attended another seed dealer meeting. Different location. Same crowd. Dennis Cole was there. During the Q&A, someone asked about precision ag adoption rates. Dennis raised his hand. I'll say the same thing I said 3 years ago, Dennis said. Equipment doesn't make the farmer. I've seen plenty of guys buy expensive iron and get average results, and I've seen guys with old equipment outproduce them. Kyle didn't raise his hand this time, because Dennis was right. Kyle had spent $900,000 on equipment, another $85,000 on consulting and soil work in year 1, another $30,000 in years 2 and 3. He'd achieved one exceptional year, one good year, and one average year. His 3-year average was 203 bushels per acre, 15 bushels above his historical baseline. That was real, that was measurable, but it wasn't the equipment that created the advantage. It was the money, the time, the expertise, the relentless focus on data. The Massey Ferguson tractors and combines had enabled it, but they hadn't caused it. Kyle had proven that precision ag could create yield advantages, but he'd also proven something he hadn't intended to prove, that the equipment was only as good as the person running it, and the systems supporting it, and the investment backing it. The Massey Ferguson 8S tractors were incredible machines. The Ideal 9T combine was one of the best Kyle had ever run, but they didn't create yields on their own. They created potential, and potential only mattered if you had the knowledge and resources to unlock it. Most farmers didn't. Kyle barely did, and that was the real lesson. Spring 2025. Kyle Brennan still farms 1,800 acres in central Iowa. He still runs Massey Ferguson equipment. The tractors have about 1,400 hours now. The combine is heading into its 4th season. The machines run beautifully. Kyle's yields are still above average. His 3-year rolling average is 203 bushels per acre on corn. But Kyle stopped talking about equipment creating yield advantages because he learned what the equipment really does. It gives you options. It gives you tools. It gives you the ability to manage at a level that wasn't possible 20 years ago. But it doesn't give you results. Results come from knowing how to use those tools, from investing in the data, from hiring the consultants, from spending the time to understand what every soil zone needs. Kyle's neighbors who bought Massey Ferguson equipment hoping for automatic yield improvements didn't get them because they bought the tools without buying the knowledge. Kyle got yield improvements, but not because of the Massey Ferguson equipment, because he spent $85,000 learning how to use it correctly. The equipment enabled the yields, but the investment created them. And that's the truth. Kyle didn't want to admit 3 years ago when he stood up in that seed dealer meeting and argued with Dennis Cole. Dennis was right. Equipment doesn't make the farmer makes the equipment work. And if you don't have the knowledge, the data, and the resources to extract every ounce of performance from that equipment, it doesn't matter what color it is or how advanced the technology is. It's just expensive iron sitting in a field. Kyle proved that precision ag works, but he also proved that it only works if you're willing to pay for the expertise to make it work. And most farmers aren't. The Massey Ferguson tractors still pull hard. The Ideal combine still cuts clean. But Kyle knows now that the 26-bushel yield improvement he got in 2022 wasn't because of the machines. It was because of Dr. Laura Stein and $55,000 worth of soil maps. The machines just made it possible, and that's a very different thing than making it happen. Kyle won the argument with Dennis Cole, but only on a technicality, and it cost him over $1 million to do it.